My name is Rhedeshia Young Willingham, and I am a parent leader. My project was called Growing Potential, and it served both two purposes. One, to engage fifth graders through eighth graders in career exploration. And the other part of the project was to introduce parents and teach them of options that they have in their students' education. And I did the project because I have two children. My oldest child is 27 and my youngest is 13. When my younger child was a middle schooler, I realized that once he left elementary school that there weren't really many options for parents as far as engagement or after school programming or enrichment. And so, in looking for that, that's the most vulnerable age when students are transitioning from elementary school to middle school. It's just really determining who they are, where their interests are, and really trying to find a space for why education was important. In going through that experience, I realized that my son wasn't introduced to a lot of options, and neither was I. So, through his school experience, he was spoken to about career exploration, but most of it was through a guidance counselor's lens. And as a parent and a family member, as the person that probably has the most intimate knowledge of my student, I wasn't invited into that conversation. So realizing that that was something that was going on with him, when I got to my youngest child, I realized that I didn't want the same experiences for her. So that's where the project came from, is how do we begin to engage students at a younger age in looking at what their future looks like and the value of education. And then how do we teach parents on how to ask for those things that are best suited for their student? I think as a parent leader, as parents, we have a really strong voice in our community. I think that many times it's underrated and undervalued. We hear the comment often that I'm just a parent, but we have the most insight on what our students need, what they desire, how to support them. So, being a parent leader for me started when my son was a kindergarten. I really needed to be involved and understand, one, what he was learning, how he was learning, and how do I ask for what he needed. So, I joined the PTO, which is probably how most parents become engaged in their communities with their schools. And I learned a lot. One, about the process of being involved, how to connect with other parents, how to really find out what the needs are in our community, and how to talk the language both to our families and to the staff and teachers at our institution. Some of the official skills that I learned through COPLTI was to get with like minded people who saw the problem in a way that you solve it, and to seek out their information and feedback. So, one of the biggest things was building the coalition, like really understanding what your community was and to be open to who would be involved and who you would invite in. And then to get some really rich discussion on what it would take to address that particular problem, and even inviting in the people that were part of the systems that were responsible for those problems. So it was really kind of understanding like what was the foundational things that you would need to move forward with developing a project or implementing a program or implementing any change. And then having really good dialogue, both where you were clearly defining what it was that you wanted to do and really being open to what your community's response was, and establishing whether or not those were important. Those were kind of the beginning parts of it. And then at that point, I think moving a little bit forward into when you're ready for action, looking at what it takes to actually have something occur. What's the cost? Who do I need to invite? Who has a say in it? Who's going to advance my cause? Who's going to support it? How do I dress when there are negative things, or how do I even reframe or rephrase what it is that I want to communicate? I think those were really important tools. And I think the last thing that you want to look at is really, how do I evaluate whether or not it's effective? Is what I asked to occur, is it what's happening? So defining on the front end what I would consider successful, and then being able to evaluate that success both through a financial perspective, and then to look at whether where I'm really touching and making the impact that I intended to occur. Was one to really take a look at what it was that we want to occur. Like, why is it occurring? And so I think PLTI was a really good foundational look at how you examine your data. Like, what are other people considering important from a data perspective? How are we advancing the cause? So, PLTI first gave a good ground foundation on establishing I saw a problem, based on what I'm seeing, it's producing this level of results. Now, how do we address it? And it makes us look at the problem from a bigger perspective. So while my student may be male and be having issues with entry into middle school, there also may be female students that are having entry into middle school. So being able to really look at the problem, not just from our narrow perspective, and I know what I'm experiencing, or what is this problem really doing across other groups, communities, and families? That's probably the biggest focus, was being able to look at it from a holistic perspective, in that what I'm trying to advance isn't just from a personal perspective, but how do I make my entire community richer and an enhancement? I would say someone who's on the fence about joining POTI should look at what aches you. Like, what is it that's personally uniquely you that you see in your community, that you know that if there was a change, that it would make it so much better for somebody else. The way that you see it is not the way that anybody else is going to see it. And so because that particular item touched you personally, then you probably really have a connection to pushing it forward and having a purpose to seeing the success of it. So when you think about that and you know that this particular item that you have in your heart and mind can make a change, the best thing is to move with it. It's something that's uniquely given to you. It's a gift, it's a talent that's specific to you. And you know probably more about that particular item than anybody else. So if you have that in your heart, if you have that in your mind to make your student or your community better, then be the person to offer that. I think PLTI is a great think tank organization. I think that as community members, we see a lot of things just from our neighbors. And joining an organization that actually gives you a local voice that can move beyond that particular local community is a really good reason to join. For me, my initial project started with just a problem in mind. And I realized as I began to delve into that problem that the implications and the interventions that I had for my program or for my project could benefit in a lot of other areas. I think joining POTI will also give you a broader look at other people's perspective of the community and really be able to evaluate how you're thinking and what you think the problem is and who needs to be involved. I am Rhedeshia Young Willingham, and I am a parent leader.